It's starting. I love it when I press the button and I'm not quite ready and I'm going to adjust my microphone right there. Hi, Facebook Live. This is Brianna and this is Wild Woman Rhapsody number 43. And I'm coming to you live from beautiful Julian, California. I'm looking out my window, feeling so blessed. And I'm getting on live today to Rhapsody about National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. Just have to take a moment, bringing some awareness to the eating disorders. Now, I don't mean to make light of this at all. It's a very serious topic, between 30 million and I would say 300 million women on this planet. But nationally, about 30 million women are estimated to deal with eating disorders and between 15 and 20 million men. So it's a significant number. And this week it was February 25th through March 4th was National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And I wanted to get online and talk about this because it's one of those taboo topics. I like doing these rhapsodies to be able to share my truth about taboo, right? Wild women, we talk about the things that are taboo because that's what wild women do. So Wild Woman Rhapsodies are really about me opening and sharing my truth about the taboo. It's not here to tell you the truth. It's not here to try to convince you of anything. I quit the convincing business a long time ago. It's just me opening my channel and sharing my truth. And I really felt it was important to get on and talk about eating disorders because disordered eating or eating disorders is something that is all throughout our society. I actually have never met someone who hasn't dealt with an eating disorder, right? Hasn't tried to externally force themselves to eat something or not eat something based on society's standards, right? That's disordered eating, right? And I'm not saying that there is one right way to eat, but I do know that it has a lot more to do with our relationship with ourselves and really starting to come to a place of love and compassion with ourselves rather than having so much external input. Rather than listening to so much from the outside, really starting to develop our relationship with our body from the inside out. What does it feel like when food enters my mouth? What does it feel like when these words come out of my mouth, right? That's really a deep relationship that we're not taught how to do as children, right? I believe disordered eating, at least in my experience, began because we're not taught how to properly digest our emotions. And so we start to use food to either give us serotonin or to punish ourselves. That's also modeled in the external, right? Like the pizza parties after a soccer game or the popcorn party. If you in your third grade class, right? My third grade class had this. If we filled up our marbles by the end of Friday, we had a popcorn party. And the danger with starting to reward or punish ourselves with food is where it all began. Right? So it began in these two camps. I want to talk about the soul line or the internal place where it began, and then the goal line, the external place where eating disorders begin. But the soul line, the internal place, is because we're often modeled by our parents, by different traditions and cultures, that food is a way to make us feel better, to emotionally feel better. Oh, you're hurting? Eat some chocolate. Oh, you're hurting? Here's a taco. Oh, you're hurting? Here's some chow mein. And similarly, also as a celebration. Oh, you're feeling good? Let's eat some food. You're feeling great? Let's celebrate. You're feeling great? Let's get some cake. Right? So that's the soul line. That's how food and our internal world get connected. How food and our external world get connected is anytime I feel bad about myself or I want to punish myself, I restrict food. How many of you have done that before? Right? I don't feel good about my body size, or I didn't quite make it, so I'm not going to get exactly what I want on the menu, right? Whether it was in academics or in sports or in any sort of physical fitness, right? I'm giving myself rewards or I'm taking away from that external place of validation through food, and how dangerous that is, and how that creates a disordered relationship, right? Instead of feeling from the inside out, what is it that my body is actually craving? What is it that I'm actually wanting? What is this relationship that I'm actually hungry for, right? And that's a question that I never got to ask myself as a child. What am I actually hungry for? What are you actually hungry for? Because so much of the disordered eating is about filling a hole that has nothing to do with food. At least it was for me. And whether it was that I was indulging in food or restricting myself from food, it was all about an internal relationship with my self-worth. and not really knowing my self-worth and not understanding how to get an intuitive touch with myself from the inside out, right? So my eating disorder lasted over a decade. I was mostly anorexic, or what's called bulimia nervosa, or nervosa. Um, Anorexia nerviosa, maybe that's right. I don't even know the correct names of it. But I had bulimia and anorexia, but mostly bulimia, which is ingesting a lot of food and then vomiting it up. And I found that I did that emotionally as well. I would take on really intense experiences and then need periods of time of being completely alone, or really intensely being close to people, with my friends, really, really close, and then not wanting to speak to them for days or weeks or sometimes longer at a time. And developing that kind of relationship in all areas of my life. And there are many types of eating disorders. There's an eating disorder that is actually about chronic exercise. There's eating disorders that is about restriction. I actually pulled up the name here because it was so interesting to me. So there's laxative abuse. There's rumination disorder, which involves the regular regurgitation of food that occurs for at least 1 month. Regurgitated food may be rechewed and reswallowed or spit out. That was an interesting one. Pica is an eating disorder that involves eating food or eating items that are not typically thought of as food, such as cotton balls or dirt. Sometimes it's to fill the void in the stomach. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, or known as ARFID, used to be called selective eating disorder, and it involves limitations to the amounts or the types of food consumed, and does not involve any distress about body size, or necessarily fear. It's just about extreme restriction of food. And I see this a lot in the yoga communities. I see this a lot in the spiritual communities, where people are former disordered eating women are basically shielding themselves from the idea of an eating disorder by calling it vegan or vegetarian. And it's fine to choose different types of diets if that's what your body is actually asking for, right? Like, what I'm an advocate for is intuitive eating, really starting to understand that having a relationship with our body. Oh, she can't hear me very well. Is it because of my microphone? Huh. Thank you for letting me know, Anna. I appreciate that. I'm going to speak up and see if that helps. I'll just take this microphone out. Okay, I think I'm back. I totally took the microphone out and went out for a little bit, and I have food in my teeth. How appropriate is that I'm talking about eating disorders with food in my teeth? Okay, Ryan says he can hear me great. Maybe you should just turn the volume up on your computer, Anna. Orthorexia is another form of eating disorder, where that's obsession with healthy eating. And so there's different types of eating disorders that is very important to explore, and know that it's not just the intense ones that we know of, like anorexia and bulimia, but that they all come from this place of, we haven't learned how to eat by noticing what's happening on the inside, right? When people ask me, well, what is it that had you get over your eating disorder? Well, 2 things. Number 1, I deeply started developing a relationship with myself. And number 2, I started understanding what my body felt like when it was hungry and when it was full, but truly. And it took slowing down. And I still get to do this intentionally to this day, because I'm not perfect, right? I still have this dance with food that's very challenging for me. There are days where I obsess about it. There are days where I can't think about anything else. There are days where it's something that I'm planning the meals in my head. And then there are other days where I don't have to think about it so much. And so just knowing that if you've ever dealt with disordered anything, it's going to be something that we get to dance with the rest of our lives, but especially food, because it's something that's a part of our lives for the rest of our lives. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like heroin that we just say, okay, I'm never going to do this again because I understand the inherent negative side effects of heroin. It's food. It's something that I get to have in my reality every day, but I get to learn how to dance with it in a way that is true and authentic and real for me from the inside out, right? What I'm an advocate for is really developing a relationship with food, a spiritual relationship with food. Ultimately, my eating disorder became my path to God. And what I mean by that is it forced me to get so present with myself, because when I wasn't present with myself, I would mindlessly eat. To this day, if I'm not present with myself, I mindlessly eat. And so it brought me to this place of needing to understand how to develop a relationship with myself, what meditation was really, what it really meant to slow down and be with myself. And it forced me to get back to nature, right? I know that when I am eating mindlessly, that is an indicator I need more tree time and less screen time. That's an indicator that it's time for me to get barefoot outside. That's an indicator that it's time for me to go sing outside, because that's been my pathway to understanding my infinite nature, or what I call God, right? The generator, the observer, and the destroyer. I found God in the trees. I found God in my breath, but it took me actually getting away from the screens, getting away from the packaged foods, and developing that relationship with myself. There's no diet that's going to fix you. There's no plant medicine that's going to fix you. There's no coach that's going to fix you. It's a deep relationship with yourself. And for me, disordered eating was the thing that forced me to get present with myself in order for me to not kill myself. Ultimately, I was on the path of slow suicide, and then eventually not wanting to be existing anymore, because my eating disorder brought me to a place where I was pretending to be someone to other people that I was not being to myself. And that level of lack of integrity was so painful that I didn't want to exist on the planet anymore, right? The cure is within. It is, if you're willing to crack, right? That's the thing, is like, so many people are stuck within their zone, Ryan. So many people are stuck within their space, and it's about constantly living on our edge. It's not like you do one course and then complete, you're cracked open, there you go. It's constantly about every day taking yourself to death, taking yourself to the edge in your meditation, in your powerful stance for being who you be on the planet, for you, the way that you coach, the way that you're being coached. Constantly being on the edge of death is the only thing that keeps us from addictions. Right? Addiction is escaping the knowing that we are living and dying in this very moment. If I don't want to pay attention to the fact that I'm living and dying in this very moment, I'm going to try to escape it through addictions. Sometimes that's addictive eating. Sometimes that's through plant substances. Sometimes that's through other substances. Sometimes it's through anything that I can use to escape the knowing that in this moment I am living and dying. Right? So whatever it is that brings you there, whether it's a leadership course or a one-on-one coach, or being in nature, or understanding your own breath work, yoga, movement, whatever it is that takes you to that edge of knowing that you're living and dying in every moment, that is getting in touch with your infinite nature. That is getting in touch with the God within. That's the only way to address any eating disorders. That's the only way to address any addictions, is to actually get to the root, that someone is brokenhearted, that they're not connected to their infinite nature in this finite moment. That is the root of all addictions. The addiction is the attempt to either reconnect to that infinite nature or to avoid the finite nature. The addiction is either the attempt to reconnect to that infinite nature or to avoid the finite nature. And most addictions are coming from a place of someone who is trying to be a shaman who didn't have the right training. They're trying to be a medicine person. They don't have the right training, right? The majority of the people who are walking around homeless are deeply, deeply, deeply lost on a shamanic experience that was not facilitated properly. And they were either trying to escape the third dimensional reality or deeply connect to something greater than them, because they were so desperate. So desperate. Their hearts were hurting. Their souls were hurting. They're so sensitive. They're sensing all of these other realms, and they're trying to connect to it through heroin or trying to escape it through meth. But all they really wanted was an experience of the divine, to remember who they are in this present moment. And because we don't have a societal structure that actually addresses the infinite in the finite moment, we don't have a shamanic structure, we don't have a spiritual structure that actually encourages mysticism, that actually encourages you to have your own relationship with God, because we don't have a societal structure like that yet until this moment, because we get to declare that now, we get to be that for each other now, we get to remind each other how infinite we are in this present moment. That's the only thing we're here to do. That's what heals each other. That's what helps us remember. No matter what gets you there, there's no one way to get there. We all have our own way to remember who we are in the infinite and also connect in the finite moment. That is spirituality. That is truly connecting to the infinite and being present in the finite moment. That is God. That is infinite. That is the only cure for eating disorder. That is the only cure for addictions. At the root of the root of the root is allowing someone to open up to their experience of their own infinite nature in this finite reality. Right? And like I said, I'm not trying to convince you. This is not any level of you needing to agree with me. I would love to hear your comments below and your experiences, right? Because if you're on here, it's very likely that you've experienced an addiction. It's very likely that you know what an eating disorder is. It's very likely that you know what challenges are of drug addictions. Like, this is not light stuff, right? I was in it for 10 plus years, deep in an eating disorder and feeling very stuck there. If I could have come out of it like that, oh, it's the infinite and the finite. Like if I would have had this when I was 13, 14, 15 years old, that would have been amazing. But I wasn't at that consciousness to call it in yet. And I needed to go on the journey that I needed to go on. To be able to stand with you and remind us all that our addictions and our patterns and our symptoms, the root of that is missing home. The root of that is missing our infinite connection in this finite experience. And so I just wanted to get on today because it's one of the last days. It might be the day after, I don't really know, of National Eating Disorders Week. And just make that point around anyone who out there that you know who has an eating disorder or is a disordered eating or is an addict. The level of compassion that we get to have for all versions of ourselves who've been there, and also anyone who's still currently struggling with an addiction or eating disorder, remembering that it's their attempt to climb to the divine or avoid something in this dimension that is so painful. Right? That's the only reason we would go to these extremes as humans, is because we really, really want to be connected. We really want to understand, and this dimension just doesn't make sense to us. Or this dimension is so painful and so hurtful and so overwhelming that we avoid it. So that's what I would like to say about eating disorders and addictions for now. It's something that is very near and dear to my heart, having been on the journey with food for so much of my life. Ryan says, totally needed this. Thank you. You're welcome. Jamie says, yes, mental illness, addiction, eating disorders, all spiritual journey, which we can get lost in. Yep, it is. Anna says, thank you, my love. I adore your passion. You're beautifully powerful. Thank you. Thank you for being on, my love. I appreciate seeing you. If anyone has any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I love chatting about these topics. And please share this video if it moves you. I think this is an important conversation about addiction and eating disorders from a spiritual perspective. You know, this isn't about blaming individuals, telling them that they need to step up in their lives. While that is an aspect of it, it's also about deeply understanding with compassion that these are people who are having a spiritual existential experience. They're in pain. I've been in pain. I'm still in pain sometimes. And what we need more than anything else, other than blaming people, is to understand that we are in a deep pain body right now on this planet at this time. We can all feel each other's pain. We can all feel Mother Earth's pain. We can feel the pain and the hatred of individuals on the planet. And so many people who are heightened in their sensitivities and don't understand that we are one organism as a human species, they're going to be feeling the pain of the arm, called Syria, or feeling pain of the leg, called sexual trauma to little girls, or feeling the pain of the eyeball, which is all the men who've never received love from their mothers. And they're the liver, but they don't understand why they're still feeling pain from all other parts of the bodies, right? You are feeling the pain of the entire body of the human body. There's one body. The human race is one body. So if you're feeling pain that isn't entirely yours, that is because you are but the finger connected to the foot that is in pain. We are one body. And yes, we have personal trauma in our lives. And yes, we have all the reason and understanding as to why we would go into these strange things that we humans do. But it's also that we are a collective. And if one person on the planet is suffering, we are all suffering. There is no reason why someone can win and someone else can lose. It just can't happen anymore, people. One person's suffering, we're all suffering. We are a generation of bodhisattvas. We are a generation of oneness consciousness. We are a generation of Christ consciousness. We are a generation of the Buddha rising again. We are the next iteration of what it means to be spiritually awakened. My brothers and my sisters and my others, wake up. We are one. If one person's suffering, we're all suffering. This can be difficult on an empath. It can. It can. And that's why we learned that sacred sovereignty of how to really claim what is ours and get deep in touch with our body. I so hear you, Anna. Man, that's a big reason why I feel that I went into the eating disordered path. Was because I was picking up on all this weird pain in my family and in the world, and I had to find a way. I got to find a way to give me some plexiglass between my experience and others' experience, and it was called food. I used food to help me as a shield from feeling all the stuff until I learned how to just let it go through my body and not needing to digest other people's experiences and get deeper connected with the earth, which is a better magnet than my own body. How to get barefoot in the earth, how to really be with the trees, right? Like people call me a tree hugger. I'm not a tree hugger. I'm a tree liver. I spend time in the trees because they literally have the wisdom that we're looking for. They know how to root down into the earth and fly so high. right? If I'm trying to connect with everyone outside of me, but I don't have a deep practice in myself, I don't know who I am, the energy of other people is going to suck me dry. Just like a tree, if it doesn't have deep roots, but it's growing up real big, guess what? The first wind comes, takes it away. But if a tree has super deep roots and it's not getting the nutrients from the sky, it can't feed the entire tree. It needs to be able to expand. We have to expand as beings. We are trees. We have to be deeply rooted in who we are and expansive in our creativity, fully open to our infinite nature and fully grounded in the third dimensional reality. That's what the trees have taught me, right? For me, being able to digest my human experience has come through spending more time in nature and less time at grocery stores and less time at restaurants, really reconnecting to who and what we are through the natural realms. And that's why I claim the word witch, because all witches across all times deeply connected to the natural cycles of life. And they were sovereign. They did not subscribe. They did not listen to, they did not work under a unifying religion. They connected to the natural cycles within themselves and within nature and worked from that place. They didn't get orders from up above from another human. They got orders directly from the spirits around them. So that's what I encourage in you. You don't have to call yourself a witch. I don't really care what the identity is. There's no identity here. I'm not into pentagrams and black cats. I'm talking about the historical word of a sovereign woman specifically connected to the cycles of nature. That's what got me out of my eating disorder, was my path to God, was understanding my sovereign right to be fully connected to my divine nature and fully in this beautiful finite experience called life. I used alcohol to hide from the pain for far too long, says Jamie. I hear you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we don't need to hide from these things anymore. And especially when we start finding the ways to connect that feel really true. Right? Hi, Rodrigo. It's good to see you. How's, brother? Thank you for all tuning in. It's a funny time, but I felt like coming on since I saw this update about National Eating Disorders Week. So share, please. If this moves you, sharing is caring. Let's get this conversation out into the world. I would love to hear your questions. John says, there are awesome 1 or 2 sentence quotes in your Rhapsody. Thank you for sharing your honesty. Our model for rehab, psychotherapy, early in its deep need of revolution. We are part of the new way, and I feel it coming on strong too. There are some awesome 1 or 2 sentences quotes. Well, I hope there's more than 1 or 2. Maybe not. I love you all. Have a beautiful day. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Love to all, light to all, peace to all. Bye.